Guys, you know that feeling when you do your laundry and you open the dryer and you pull on a warm sweater? That's what just happened to me. And it's warm and it's great. Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ashley. I recently read Dracula and I absolutely loved it. That video is coming up soonly. I realized that I loved a lot of the Gothic elements that exist in Dracula, and I did a little bit of research to figure out, what does a Gothic novel entail, and what are some other Gothic novels from the Victorian era that I can read, because I'm kind of on a craze for Victorian Gothic. So let's get into it. Okay, book number one that I have on my list is a novella called Dr. Jekyll, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. This is about a lawyer who is investigating the relationship between a scientist named Dr. Henry Jekyll and a newcomer to town named Mr. Hyde. And Mr. Hyde is involved in nefarious undergoings inside the city, and it's not clear what's going on, and that's why there's an investigation. I have heard lots of really good things about this story. I've also seen a lot of parodies of this, so I'm pretty sure I know the big spoiler at the end, but I'm not going to say it because I'm not going to spoil it for you. In my mind, I'm expecting this novel to be Sherlock Holmes with ghostly Gothic elements, and that sounds fabulous to me. So I'm really excited for that one. Number two, Withering Heights by Emily Bronte. This is the sister of Charlotte Bronte, who wrote Jane Eyre, and Wuthering Heights follows Heathcliff, who is adopted into a family and sort of lives the life and prestige of this family, and then the father dies and he no longer can live that life of prestige, and he has to go and earn a living for himself and leave the girl that he is in love with. He later returns rich and educated and tries to get revenge on the people who have made his life miserable. I'm not sure quite where the misery comes from, but I'm getting strong Count of Monte Cristo vibes, and I am currently slowly making my way through the Count of Monte Cristo, so that sounds excellent to me. Anyway, I've heard lots of really good things about this book. I've also heard that it's really sad, so prep for you. The next book is Camilla by Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu. I'm really bad with author names, and I apologize. I'm sure he's dead because this is 1850s, but I apologize anyway. So this is what's considered the first vampire novel for the 1850s, or kind of what we would consider the first vampire novel of the modern era. This follows the story about Laura and her father, who live kind of secluded away from town, and they meet a stranger and take her in because she is injured, and her name is Camilla. And while Camilla is staying with them, some of the girls in the town start to get injured, and then they start to die, and it's really fishy the way things are happening, and then Laura herself gets sick. And her father is convinced that vampires are afoot. Dun, dun, dun! Anyway, the next book is The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. Wilkie Collins. And this follows Walter Hartwright. Sorry about last names. I'm really sorry. Who is a drawing instructor, and he's sent to teach a woman named Laura, and he and Laura fall in love. But of course, this is a Gothic novel, and they can't just fall in love and get married, because then it wouldn't be a Gothic novel. Laura is engaged to Percival, and she marries him, and her heart becomes embroiled in sinister plots. All the while, there's a mysterious ghostly woman who is wandering around giving advice about the underpinnings of everyone's life and what they're actually doing behind the scenes. This was written at the same time that Sherlock Holmes was, and it was hugely popular at the time that it was written, I believe, if I'm remembering from my research correctly. I've heard that it was really popular. Anyway, I've heard lots of good things about this novel as well, and I'm really excited to pick it up. It is a fairly big book, but it probably is a pretty quick read. Well, We'll find out. The next book is Pictures of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. I didn't realize that this book was written by Oscar Wilde. I probably would have picked it up a little bit sooner had I known that. I think this is Oscar Wilde's only novel. But let's not go down in history as me having said that for sure and for a positive. Anyway, this follows Dorian Gray, who has recently had his portrait taken, meaning he sat and posed for a painting for hours. Anyway, he is looking at his painting and he really loves his own beauty, and he decides that is the most worthy thing that you can chase in this world and possess. And he decides that he is going to sell his soul to remain beautiful. And instead of him aging, his portrait ages. And that's all I know about the novel, and that sounds super wicked interesting. And I really want to know how that goes awry, because I feel like it has to go awry. It's a Gothic novel. Okay, the next book is called Vampire, but it's vampire with a Y instead of an I at the end. So, purposefully misspelling things since 1850. Just kidding, I have no idea if it was purposely misspelled, but it feels like it. This is by John William Polidori. So, fun fact about this book. Remember how Frankenstein was everybody was bored and it was a storm and they're like, let's come up with spooky tales to scare the crap out of each other. And Frankenstein was one of them. Well, this is another one of those books, another one of those tales that came out of that night, which is great. I want to read this novel just for that fact, that there was a group of people who decided to tell each other scary stories in the middle of a storm. It's just great. That's just great. Anyway. So this follows a young Englishman named Aubrey, and he decides to travel through Europe together with a man named Lord Ruthven. And while they're in Europe, Lord Ruthven is attacked and brutally killed by bandits, and he makes Aubrey swear that he will not talk about his death for the next year and a day. And he swears because it's his dying wish, and then a couple days or months later, Lord Ruthven starts walking around as though nothing happened. And Aubrey is deeply confused and even more astonished and terrified when Lord Ruthven, there we go, starts to court his sister. So that sounds great. I'm super excited for this one. The next book is The Island of Dr. Moreau by H.G. Wells. I have not yet read anything by H.G. Wells, and this sounds like a really interesting one to start with. So this follows a man named Edward Purdick, who is shipwrecked, or his ship his ship either perishes in the water or he falls off the ship. I'm not really sure. Anyway, he's in the water and he gets picked up by sailors who don't have room for him somehow, and he gets left on the island that is owned by Dr. Moreau. And Dr. Moreau, fun fact, he was kicked out of English society for his experimentation with trying to mold animal and human bodies together. And Edward quickly discovers that everything is not the way it's supposed to be on the island, and is now faced with the decision of how to escape from the compound owned by Dr. Moreau, because he doesn't want to become the next experiment, and also how does he get off the island to return to normal civilized life without having animal parts attached to his body. So this sounds like Gilligan's Island combined with Frankenstein and maybe a little bit of werewolves with an animal element to it. So that sounds great. It sounds terrifying. And I think I'm here for it. We'll see how much of a scaredy pants I am when it comes to that, but it sounds amazing. Next is the Valette by Charlotte Bronte. This is the woman who also wrote Jane Eyre, and many people consider Valette to be better than Jane Eyre. I mean, it's all subjective depending on who you ask, but she wrote this after she wrote Jane Eyre, and I'm really excited to read that. So after a family disaster, this story follows Lucy Snow, who travels to the French village of Valette to teach at a girls' school, where she falls in love with one of the other professors named Paul. And of course they want to get married, but one of them belongs to the Protestant church and one of them belongs to the Catholic church, and their families are like, no way, and try to keep them apart. And what makes it Gothic is that there is a nun haunting Lucy. So I don't know how that gets worked in, but I'm really excited about it. I love Jane Eyre, and I am really excited to see what Charlotte Bronte was capable of after she had experience with the publishing world. I'm really excited for that one. And then the last one on this list is The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne. This is the only one to take place in America. This follows the story of Hester, who lives in Puritan New England, and this takes place, I believe, in the early 1700s, or it's written in that time period. Anyway, she has had a daughter out of wedlock, and she is shunned by her current society. Her husband returns from a trip abroad or from boating. I'm not sure where he's been, but he returns and he's furious that she has been sleeping around, and he demands to know what's going on. He investigates, trying to figure out who got his wife pregnant, and everything seems to point to the town's saintly minister. Dun, dun, dun. So I am assuming something dramatic happens at that point, but I'm not sure yet. I feel like I have read this book before. I don't remember anything if I did. Anyway, so those are 9 books of Gothic literature that have what I hope will be similar haunting atmospheric vibes as Dracula and perhaps Jane Eyre. And now it's just a matter of getting my hands on these books. The hunt begins. I will talk to you all next week. Bye, guys.